My grandfather farmed in this area. It's family tradition.
Back in 1941, my dad come from Mississippi over here to Matthews Junction, rode a train. And him and 11 more men bought 16 acres of ground apiece.
And it's very productive farmland that has been farmed for 6 generations.
In May 2011, heavy spring rains and snowmelt led to flooding all along the Mississippi River. As levees fought back the rising waters, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers carried out a controversial plan to destroy a part of the levee holding back the river, to protect the town of Cairo, Illinois. This 2-mile hole of destruction let the waters flow into the New Madrid floodway. This area, located just below where the Ohio River pours into the Mississippi, is home to 130,000 acres of rich, fertile farmland, land with the potential to feed over 1 million people a year. The area farmers and the communities that serve them have been making a living here for several generations.
If you take away the farming, you take away the farmer, there's a lot of businesses here that have been started and established solely to support farming.
You've got all of these agribusinesses, probably 30 to 40% of whose business is done with the producers right there in the floodplain. You've got all of the farm hands and their families who depend on the salaries they earn from the farmers when they're planting. And you've got the grocery stores and the hairdressers and the pharmacists and you name it, all the way down the line, whose income suffers because the Corps won't help put their lives back together again.
And at 10:30 on the second night of May, they blew it.
The Corps detonated explosives all along the first several sections of the levee. The blast was stage 1 of their plan, which was the release of the Mississippi River waters into the floodway.
We wanted everyone to be saved. We wanted the Corps to make an attempt to keep everyone whole. We didn't want our ground, want our livelihoods, want our houses, want our residences destroyed by the onslaught of water that came through the floodway. We feel like we were sacrificed.
550,000 cubic feet of water a second rushed across the 130,000 acres of farmland and communities. The wall of water shredded grain bins, washed away homes, carved out massive craters hundreds of yards long, and completely destroyed the African-American community of Pinhook.
It's just a loss, especially the ones that didn't have insurance. It's a complete loss.
What they caused when they blew these gaps in our levee was a huge velocity of water flowing with current. And it's carrying grain bins and cows and trees and cars and anything else.
A second blast, detonated further down the spillway, was meant to connect this new river of rapids back to the Mississippi River, essentially creating a new path for the Mississippi right through the spillway. According to the plan, as the floodwaters receded and the Mississippi River went to its original pre-flood level, the floodwaters would drain out of the spillway.
No more good than what it did. They could have just let it run over. You would have had just the same thing. It's just like what we call the backwater coming in. You probably could have went in, pulled the roofs off the floor of the houses and washed the walls down like a flash flood. But when you turn Mississippi River loose in a community, it's Mississippi River flowing through there, and that's what we had.
As the floodwaters continued to engulf the spillway, affecting more and more lives, the Corps detonated a third blast. Their plan was to get the rising floodwaters out of the spillway. However, this idea had the direct opposite effect. The Mississippi River, still at record high flood level, sent even more of its floodwater into the spillway from the south. The spillway became an even bigger lake, with even more violent water it didn't need.
The third hole they blew in our levee is probably the biggest mistake of this entire operation. There's still water running in it.
I think the most shocking thing to see, short of the levee detonation, which was horrifying, was the amount of water that had settled into the floodway. I mean, I'm out in a boat. I felt like I was on a bay. I felt like I was in Lake Michigan. It was hard to fathom, and it was incredulous to see that, and it just made me so sad.
Every time the river come up, you're gonna think about one thing: water up to the roof of my house.
They didn't blow it like they said it's gonna blow it. You know, they messed up a lot of ground besides all the homes and the buildings and the economy, and you know, it's gonna finger down for years.
Well, the fact that it is a man-made disaster is very problematic. The government caused these people's lives to no longer exist.
For the people who live here, the flooding represents the beginning of a long process. Their lives have been changed dramatically.
They're scattered all over the county and out of the county too, wherever they can find a place. And they'll be scattered for a long time because most of the houses down there, you can't move back in them.
It will take several years to put the area's biggest asset, its lifeblood, the fertile farmland, back to the way it was. And some land may never be restored.
There's some of this ground here that's going to take a major undertaking to get it back to farmable, and it's going to take it years to come back. You know, you can't miss too many crops and stay in the farming business.
The Food and Agricultural Policy Research Institute, a joint research program of the University of Missouri-Columbia and Iowa State University, estimated crop losses in the floodway at over $85 million, and the broader economic impact at over $156 million.
If these farmers aren't made whole, if we don't restore their livelihood, their business in the spillway, our business will not recover.
This is their life, you know, and some of it's gone. It's just ruined. I wish they would actually come down here and see what's going on, see how much it has hurt this economy. This was not something that we brought on ourselves. This was something that was put upon us.
Since it was a man-made disaster, FEMA can't help you. If it was an act of God, then they could help you.
But as far as compensation for your losses, nothing.
You know, I've been fortunate to service families for 3 generations that have put crops in, have made their whole life with the ground that they farm, and for some of those people, that livelihood right now is gone. It bothers me tremendously to see them going through the pain that they've gone through. It's disheartening.
For now, the farm families and the communities that support them spend their time picking up their lives. They look at how to rebuild and move on. They look for answers from a bureaucracy that has put this upon them. And they look for answers from government officials on if or when the Corps will rebuild a permanent levee.
If you don't have your brakes working right and you run your car right through the middle of my house and tear it all to pieces, I expect you to fix it. And that's kind of where we are. This is not a disaster created by God. This is a disaster created by man.
They have a right to take care of themselves and to take care of their families and take care of their communities. And for the government to say, we're not going to protect you from natural disasters, you can't do this anymore, is a travesty.
In our community, like you said earlier, it's mostly all black people. They're poor black people in that area. If I can get this out, just a fair shake, just be fair. Because it's not fair.